On the front line, U.S. Border Patrol agents, the nation's gatekeepers, trusted to protect the public, but where tension escalates every day.
Next thing you know, the shots start firing off, just pop, 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 pop.
There is also a tragic cost.
I get a phone call, and my dad tells me, "Oh, your brother's been shot."
How did a government agency get to this point?
The rapid expansion of the Border Patrol was the largest expansion of any U.S. law enforcement agency in the history of U.S. law enforcement.
What is being done to ease the strain between the law and the people on both sides of the border?
We work together to improve training, to give them better technology. It makes a big difference.
In this hour, an MSNBC special in partnership with Telemundo and the Center for Investigative Reporting. Clash at the border. Hello, I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. Here on the Texas-Mexico border and throughout the country, there are passionate feelings on all sides of the issue of who comes to the United States and how they get here. U.S. Customs and Border Protection controls the flow of people coming and going. Border Protection is also the largest law enforcement entity in the United States. According to the ACLU, between 2010 and 2015, 24 civilians died in encounters with Border Patrol agents, with few consequences for the agents or the agency. And a growing chorus of people began to ask why. We start with the pursuit of a better life and a dangerous border crossing not far from where I'm standing. The women involved agreed to share their story as long as we concealed their identities. This story begins with a glimmer of hope and ends with a harrowing journey. Maria, her 14-year-old daughter, and another teenage girl set off on a tough trek that's not uncommon for Central Americans trying to come to the United States. Over 2 weeks, they travel from their native Honduras through Guatemala, where they were abandoned by a trafficker who they say took off with their money. They then team up with a group of mothers and children and arrive at the U.S. border the morning of March 12, 2014. Christine Poarch is Maria's attorney.
The irony of this whole story is that so much of the violence typically occurs before they ever enter the U.S. border. And in this case, it all happened after. They entered and were told when they entered to look for Border Patrol, and so they sat by a road and waited.
Maria says 5 minutes after they arrive, they see a Border Patrol truck coming down the road. Inside the vehicle is Esteban Manzanares, a 32-year-old agent who has been working the border for several years. Surrendering to an agent has become routine for women and children crossing the border because they're told by their traffickers if they do so, they will be granted asylum. But on this day, these three women happened to meet up with Manzanares, an agent under scrutiny for not doing his job effectively.
Él llega y se te para y hablaba español.
He came up to us and he spoke Spanish. He asked if we were alone. We told him we were alone, and he kept looking around us and then asked again if there was anyone else with us. I told him it was only me and my 2 children.
They were told by countless other people that this is how this would go. I think they overcame their own suspicions by virtue of what they perceived was normal.
The women say Manzanares tells them to get into his truck and locks them in. And for the threesome, fear begins to mount. They say he then starts to drive away, and all three women begin to wonder where to.
Se pusieron a llorar.
The girls started to cry. I told them I would protect and take care of them, and that we had to pray.
Dijéramos el Salmo 91 muchas veces.
So we prayed Psalm 91 over and over again.
Que dice el que habita bajo el abrigo del Altísimo morará bajo la sombra del Omnipotente.
Whoever dwells in the shelter of God will rest in the shadow of the Almighty.
One of the things that I think is really striking about this particular story is the length of time that these women knew that there was something awry and that they were moving towards something quite menacing.
He drives deeper into the desert. There are woods on either side. I can't see the road anymore, and he took us out and ties our feet and tapes our feet, mouth, and hands. He puts us back in the truck and drove in farther this time, where there were no people around.
Me dijo que me tenía que matar.
He said he had to kill me because it was his duty. I knelt down and begged. I told him I would give my life for the two girls.
Yo le dije que me matara a mí, pero que dejara la...
I told him to kill me, but let the two girls live. He took me to the woods and pushed me to the ground 3 times. He would pick me up and beat me.
Y me cortó las venas.
And without saying a single word, he just slit my wrists
Me llevó al monte
and kicked me, and then tries to break my neck.
Maria says she plays dead and waits for Manzanares to leave. Not long afterwards, she hears her daughter screaming.
Mom's presence of mind at this point is beyond comprehension because she's bleeding severely. She has no real use of her hands, but she's ripping apart her clothing to, in essence, make sure that she's tying enough of a tourniquet so she can get to where she thinks there might be people.
Yo me quité toda la ropa.
I was naked. All I had on were my pants. I was barefoot and I started running. I saw another border agent and I ran in that direction. I started running really fast to reach him.
He speaks Spanish, so when she approaches the Border Patrol officer, she, is frantically trying to explain, I was attacked, this is what happened, this is, what we've been through, there are 2 other children. And when the Border Patrol officer asks her, what did he look like? She says, he looks like you. He looks like you.
The agent pieces together that she is referencing another Border Patrol agent. So agents set out to search for the 2 girls. They find Maria's daughter wandering the desert. Remarkably, she saved herself the same way her mother did, playing dead until Manzanares leaves and then making a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Manzanares takes the other teenage girl to his home.
Cuts her clothing off, bathes her, and then sexually assaults her after he ties her to a bed, and then basically spends the next several hours assaulting her, taking photos, all sorts of really horrific acts.
Le dijo que
He told her he couldn't take me because it would be like raping his own mother. Regarding my daughter, since she was my daughter, he also said he had to kill her.
porque era muy hermosa y por eso se la había llevado.
But he told her he needed her because she was pretty. She was very beautiful. That's why he'd taken her.
The Border Patrol figure out Manzanares is involved once they track who is on duty that day and then find blood and duct tape in his vehicle. The agency calls in the FBI. The search is now on for a kidnapper. FBI agents knock on Manzanares' door. They hear a single gunshot. A SWAT team arrives at 2 in the morning and finds Manzanares dead from a self-inflicted gunshot to the head. The 3rd victim is finally rescued, 17 hours after her terrifying ordeal began. All 3 women are living in the United States. They each are struggling to recover and have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and severe depression. Maria is also still battling the pain and injuries of her assault. The day after the attack, the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, Gil Kurlikowski, issued a statement saying in part, "I am deeply sorry that this incident occurred and I'm committed to doing everything in my power to prevent incidents like this from occurring again."
This case isn't one officer just engaged in misconduct. This was a persistent, planned, very detailed course of conduct over the course of almost 24 hours.
Maria says her story should serve as a cautionary tale for others looking to better their lives because, in the end, you may end up in a worse place than before you started.
Que lo piensen mucho porque a veces
I would say to them, think it over really well, because the people you think are going to protect you are the ones that hurt you. We were told when we got to the U.S. to ask for the Border Patrol. They would help us. That's not what happened. Instead of protecting us, they hurt us.
Coming up, an encounter at the Arizona border leaves grief and questions in its wake.
I was just trying to like push them off and be like, that's my brother, just give him help. Like, I just wanted them to help my brother. It happened on March 21st, 2011. And that's when a lot of stuff in my mind just started changing. And I saw the world completely different.
Esa mañana,
that morning was a beautiful morning.
tan bonita, tuvimos.
We'd had a party with my mom the night before.
Me acuerdo.
I remember we made chimichangas. He loved bean chimichangas.
Frijoles.
I get a phone call, and my dad tells me that, oh, your brother's been shot. I'm like, what do you mean he's been shot? I left school, and I see my brother and his truck, and his body's just laying there.
Marta La Madrid finds her brother, 19-year-old Carlos, laying motionless on the border in Arizona. He has been shot by a Border Patrol agent and is wearing handcuffs and has 4 bullets in his body.
I was just trying to like push them off and be like, that's my brother, just give him help. Like, I just wanted them to help my brother.
Once help arrives, La Madrid is rushed to the hospital.
Le decía yo, ¿dónde está Carlos?
I said to her, "Where's Carlos?
¿Dónde está Carlos?
Where's Carlos?"
Y ya me les metí.
I sneaked in between all the police officers.
Yo lo miré
I saw him in the bed.
en la cama. Pero ya está.
He was all swollen, my son.
Yo sé que.
I know he saw me.
Y estuvimos como.
We waited for about 2 hours.
Y ya nomás salió
And
el
then the doctor
y dijo
came out and told me
que Carlos ya había muerto.
that Carlos was dead.
I learned about the killing of Carlos La Madrid through press coverage. It was a well-known incident in the area.
The La Madrid family hires attorney Bill Reisner. Reisner is well known for successfully pursuing legal action against the Border Patrol. He says his first step is to learn what actually happened at the border. And he says the truth is hard to come by.
Carlos was driving in Douglas, Arizona, which is a town right on the border. The person that he was giving a ride to was Manuel Chino Lino. He was 17 years old, who had carried a backpack of marijuana across the border. And Carlos was driving him somewhere. Lucas Tidwell was the border agent. He's listening to the radio and hears that the police are chasing someone who has marijuana in the vehicle.
Reisner says Tidwell moves in on La Madrid's car as La Madrid approaches the fence at the border. The two vehicles collide and La Madrid makes a run for the fence.
So he ran to the ladder, immediately went up. He was, maybe up 8 feet, and then he shot. He's hit once through the arm and then 3 others directly in his back.
Tidwell says that someone on the Mexican side throws a rock. Reisner says it is at this point he begins to doubt the agent's version of events. Tidwell says he believes more rocks are coming his way, and so he continues to shoot. He says he sees someone at the top of the fence who is the perpetrator. The challenge, Reisner says, is that La Madrid is not even halfway up the ladder when he is shot.
You spoke about hearing a bullet firing.
Reisner says he begins to interview witnesses, and he says no one has seen anyone actually throwing rocks. He also says that even if someone was throwing rocks, rockings, as they call them on the border, are routine, and agents are trained to handle them a certain way.
The Border Patrol actually has vehicles that are like a traveling cage that goes along the border because so many rocks bounce over. And of course, what agents do when people throwing rocks from them, they get away. Instead of putting it in reverse when he's inside his vehicle, he gets out and fires off multiple rounds, hollow point bullets, center mass.
As part of his investigation, Reisner analyzes 4 different videos taken at the time of the shooting. He has access to 2 vantage points from Border Patrol cameras that he subpoenaed. He says there were also witnesses on the Mexican side of the border recording the scene.
Mira, está tirado uno, mira, aquí se alcanza a ver, mira.
And then, an anonymous bystander sent the La Madrid family video they secretly recorded on a phone. As Reisner analyzes the video, he says he sees Tidwell move his vehicle, and he also says he sees agents move La Madrid's truck, essentially destroying evidence. In a video deposition, one of the witnesses on the Mexican side confirms Reisner's observation.
Exactly, they moved it. They moved the vehicle that the agent was in, and they also moved the vehicle that the guys were in.
Reisner says his investigation was hampered further by the footage given to him by the Border Patrol. The video he received, he says, is almost impossible to decipher.
We took a deposition of the video operator, and they have terrific cameras. The camera operator says when he looks at a screen, he can see good clarity. We showed him the video. He said, it looks like a painting. It looks like an impression of something.
We reached out to Tidwell's attorney, who told us it was clearly a case of self-defense and that Tidwell was almost hit by a rock. He added what people forget is that agents are trained to use deadly force for rocking events. 4 years after La Madrid's death, his family gathers at the very place he lost his life.
We usually come here to the border to celebrate his birthday. Even though he's not here, we still feel that he is.
The family lives on both sides of the border, and that's how they gather for the celebration. But almost as soon as they arrive, there is a standoff and a confrontation. The Border Patrol tells the family they have to leave, and old wounds reopen.
Hey, you can kill me. I'm already, I'm not, I don't have any weapons. You can kill me. I'm in my back already. Stupid idiot.
The agents eventually retreat. But for the La Madrid family, the planned celebration becomes more of a reminder of what they have lost. Coming up, strain on all sides, the impact of an agency growing too big, too fast.
The rapid expansion of the Border Patrol was the largest expansion of any U.S. law enforcement agency in the history of U.S. law enforcement.
Life on the border has become a daily clash of cultures, a volley of insults, and then, occasionally and tragically, a loss of human life. In a string of shootings by the Border Patrol that have stirred up emotions at the border, there's one case in particular that has become a rallying cry for justice. The shooting of a 16-year-old boy named Jose Antonio Elena Rodriguez.
To this date, I have not cried for my son. It's very strange. They informed me and I've never cried. His funeral, I never shed a tear for him. I never cried because I didn't want to accept it was him.
According to the Border Patrol, on October 10th, 2012, Jose heads out late at night. He walks down a road along the border fence in Nogales, Mexico. Border Patrol agents and local police officers on the U.S. side begin to swarm the border fence in response to a 911 call about men allegedly escaping into Mexico with drugs. As those men begin to climb the 18-foot fence back into Mexico, agents rush in. Someone on the Mexican side begins to throw rocks, and an unnamed border agent shoots in response. Jose is killed in the line of fire. Luis Parra is representing Jose's family in a lawsuit against the Border Patrol.
So on October 10th of 2012, there was a call into the Nogales Police Department, and the transcript of the recording is basically a call for suspicious activity.
I got bundles, I got bundles. Head on over to I-19, head on over to I-19, I got two.
This is a recording of the radio transmission when the police first spot the two men climbing the fence.
At that point, it gets kind of fuzzy with regards to the reports that were drafted by the Nogales Police Department.
Parra says the audio he has heard makes him question the sequence of events. He visits the scene of the shooting and notices a Border Patrol camera 100 feet from the actual location. He says he petitions the agency for the footage and is still waiting to receive it. Jim Tomczyk is the former Assistant Commissioner of Internal Affairs at Customs and Border Protection. He is familiar with investigations into corruption and other misconduct, and in several cases is deeply troubled by what he saw. He says he was reassigned in June 2014, and he is speaking out to clear his name. Of all of these cases, is there one or two that make you lose sleep at night?
I'll mention one, Jose Elena Rodriguez.
Tomczyk has seen surveillance footage of Jose's shooting. He agrees to speak to us exclusively about it and some of the behind-the-scenes workings at Border Patrol that troubled him.
It was an incident where two persons had smuggled marijuana into the United States, were detected by Border Patrol surveillance cameras. There was a Border Patrol agent and two Nogales police officers who had a canine with them. Simply watching the two marijuana smugglers, a second Border Patrol agent arrives on the scene, gets out of the vehicle, walks to the border fence, draws his firearm and begins firing through the fence into Mexico.
The Border Patrol hides the identity of the actual shooter for 2 years until a judge orders them to release his name. His name is Lonnie Schwartz, and there are no public photos of him. We reached out to Schwartz's attorney for comment, and he said, since the case is pending, it would be inappropriate to do that. He did add that he did not think the facts portrayed will turn out to be accurate. What about Agent Schwartz? What do you know about him and his background?
He was one of those persons hired by the Border Patrol during the surge.
The surge Tomczyk is referring to is a massive increase of Border Patrol personnel. After the so-called bungling of intelligence leading up to 9/11, President George W. Bush is determined to shore things up at the borders. So, the administration reorganizes the nation's gatekeepers. The Immigration and Naturalization Service is dissolved, and the Department of Homeland Security is created. Homeland Security is given enormous power and billions of dollars to spend towards securing the border. And as part of that mandate, the Border Patrol expanded from 10,000 agents to 20,000 in just 2 years.
The rapid expansion of the Border Patrol was the largest expansion of any U.S. law enforcement agency in the history of U.S. law enforcement.
Tomczyk says he goes to work to fix what he says are the agency's deeply flawed hiring practices.
We needed to have in place the standard federal law enforcement applicant screening polygraph program. There was a considerable resistance to that, but we were able to put in place a polygraph program identical in terms of scope and magnitude as that which is used in the FBI, DEA, Secret Service.
Tomczyk says it becomes clear soon after implementing the lie detector test why it's so important.
The shocking discovery we found was that more than half of the persons who had cleared background investigations failed the polygraph examination, the vast majority of them providing detailed descriptions of the criminal activity they had been involved in. Most notable, a person who admitted killing their own child.
Tomczyk says the agency is still dealing with the fallout of the hiring surge. In your opinion, what percentage of agents were bad hires?
I believe the numbers could be as high as 1/4 to 1/3 of those persons hired.
He says those bad hires have had lethal consequences. How many shootings happened under your watch?
There was a focus on 28 incidents of fatal use of force. About a fourth appeared to be highly suspect in terms of whether or not the use of force was appropriate.
Of those 28, how many were prosecuted?
None.
0.
Correct. What I believed was happening with Border Patrol leadership was an effort to steer the investigation toward an outcome that would support a legitimate use of force, when in fact that may not be the case.
So truth be damned.
Yes.
In September, the Department of Justice indicted Lonnie Schwartz on second-degree murder charges. Schwartz has pled not guilty and is awaiting trial. He is the first border agent to face federal murder charges for a cross-border shooting. Coming up, the human and economic toll of day-to-day life at the border.
I've had 50 vehicles that have cut the wall down and driven through. They drive through the ranch, get to the highway, and they're gone.
When Clash at the Border continues. When you think about clashes between law enforcement and civilians at the border, you may expect conflict with people who are trying to enter the United States, not with people who have been here for generations. The border between the U.S. and Mexico is prime territory for ranching, and many ranchers have a long relationship with the Border Patrol. Most believe in the agency's mission to protect the country and keep undocumented immigrants out. But now, some in the ranching community say they no longer feel protected by the Border Patrol, and as a result say their lives are on the line every day.
I'm John Ladd. My family's been on this ranch for 119 years. Started in 1896. It was originally in a dairy, and then it ends up we're raising beef cows since 1942. Up until it became a state, it went into what was Mexico.
John Ladd cares for his cattle much the same way his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather did. Life on the ranch is hard, but not for the reasons you may think. Since the 1980s, Ladd says he has found himself in the middle of a long-fought battle, a fight over turf, opportunity, and the law. On one side, the undocumented migrants from Mexico.
Immigration didn't start getting bad until the late 80s. And we've sponsored 3 guys to be citizens in my lifetime. They're part of the family. When you get 200 or 300 a day, that's what's changed.
On the other side of the battlefront lays an unexpected rival, the Border Patrol.
There's no consequences for Border Patrol, no accountability. Lots of poor leadership, they move people around a lot. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, it's the same problem. From the mid-90s up until about 5 years ago, it was unbelievable the number of people coming. And about 5 years ago, the cartel took over the human trade. There's been a dramatic reduction in the illegals, but we've had a dramatic increase in the amount of dope coming through the ranch.
The Sinaloa cartel runs the route by Ladd's Ranch, known as one of the most dangerous organized crime and drug trafficking groups in the world. The cartel was made even more notorious after their leader, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, escaped from a maximum security prison in Mexico through a tunnel. So ultimately, the cartel has now created a freeway through his property to get the drugs into the United States. Ladd says you can only imagine how much more dangerous life has become for him and his family.
Well, when you got 1,200 pounds of marijuana, the stakes are a little higher to keep it. That's where the danger is, and you're dealing with cartel on all of it now.
The steady stream of human and drug traffic is also taking a toll on his property.
When it first started, it was cut fences and broken water lines. They're cutting the fence to come through. They want a drink of water, so they'll break the pipe to get a drink. We're losing 10,000 gallons of water every day. The consequences with Border Patrol, when they're chasing somebody in a vehicle, they're running through gates, they're running through fences. People say, well, what's the big deal? I said, well, you know, Mike, if you run into a 1,500-pound cow on the highway going 65 miles an hour, you're probably going to die.
And Ladd says he doesn't want to bear the guilt if there's a fatality. There's also the manpower involved. He says it takes him 2 days just to inspect the perimeter of his property for possible damage. Half of his time is spent inspecting fences, pipes, and water towers. He says the cost of the collision between migrants, smugglers, and agents is not cheap.
We've estimated probably a couple of $1 million in 25 years. I've had 50 vehicles that have cut the wall down and driven through. They drive through the ranch, get to the highway, and they're gone. We're driving on the border on the south end of our property, which butts into Mexico. Up until the 90s, there wasn't any infrastructure up here. We had a 7-strand barbed wire fence, and that was it. And there wasn't a road up here.
Ladd invites us along to tour the ranch. While we were there, the Border Patrol was a constant presence.
What this agent's doing now is dragging tires behind the truck to smooth out the area so they can come back in an hour and identify footprints of illegals going north. My opinion of this is it's the biggest waste of time that ever existed in Border Patrol. This doesn't work anymore. Everybody that's coming illegally, they're wearing booties. Fleece on their shoes, they're wearing big, heavy socks, whatever. And they don't leave footprints. And Border Patrol knows that.
Ladd says he had a harmonious relationship with the Border Patrol until their expansion.
Up until when Homeland Security was formed, the Border Patrol did okay.
Ladd says he has a solution, an idea tossed around frequently by those who live and work on the border.
Put more agents on the border. That's the first thing. And then let Washington get out of the immigration policy and let Border Patrol do what they're trained to do.
In the meantime, the drug trade continues, and Ladd, who says he considers himself a patriot, is left feeling abandoned by his own country.
There's no secret of why we're busy. It was deliberate, even before Homeland Security was formed, is get all the traffic out of the towns. Put them on the more remote areas, which is the ranches. So it's, well, what about us? Well, you're only one family, we don't care. Collateral damage.
The Border Patrol told us in a statement, a combination of tactical infrastructure, technology, and personnel is deployed across the border that allows CBP to detect and appropriately resolve illegal cross-border activity. Coming up, a car accident with life-changing consequences.
The bullet passed from the window and went in my mouth, took out the top of my mouth and a piece of my tongue as it shattered a tooth on this other side.
Just south of Tucson, Arizona, and cradled by the Babo Kivari Mountains, is the Tohono O'odham Reservation. The tribal territory extends into Mexico, so on the reservation, the two countries are only separated by a gate. This lack of security and an abundance of poverty has made the reservation a popular corridor for drug and human smuggling. So the land is swarming with Border Patrol agents, and the tension between the two groups is thick. On one spring evening in 2014, the feud comes to a head.
It was a Sunday around midnight, a night that I'm not gonna forget.
We were just hanging out, watching movies, cooking out, just having a good time, Everybody was in a good mood.
Just drinking. I don't know, decided to go for a ride. Thought it would be okay just to take a little cruise down the village.
So Sean Miguel, Eamon Chavez, and Ramos Listo head out. Sean is in the driver's seat, Eamon next to him, Ramos in the back.
I remember seeing headlights. I was thinking it was probably someone who was lost. Just trying to pull up to them and, help them.
We're going towards the headlights, and all I see them is coming towards me. I catch that it's a green and white Border Patrol vehicle, and it's already too late. The only words I got to get out of my mouth was, whoa, what are you doing?
I misjudged my turn and sideswiped the agent, and before I can even say anything, he shoots at us.
Next thing you know, the shots start firing off, just pop, 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 pop. I start telling Sean and Ramos, guys, I think I'm shot.
I just stepped on the gas and tried to get away because I had to help Eamon, and my adrenaline's pumping where I don't realize I got shot in the face. The bullet passed from the window, driver's window, and went in my mouth, took out the top of my mouth, and a piece of my tongue as it shattered a tooth on this other side.
Sean and Eamon are badly wounded. Ramos is not shot and out of fear makes a run for it through the desert. The Border Patrol ultimately capture all three men, and Sean and Eamon are admitted to the hospital. The agent involved in the accident is named Joseph Spann. He says Sean intentionally rammed into his vehicle. Spann also says he has a broken leg.
He was pinned against his vehicle. He was pressed against it. His life was in danger. His legs were crushed. He reached for his gun. He shot at the threat. The threat drove away.
Sean's blood alcohol level is 0.199, more than double the state's limit. Sean is charged with aggravated assault on a federal agent. Weaver Barkman is a former sergeant in the Pima County Sheriff's Office. He is brought in by the federal public defenders to help with the investigation.
The three most important things in this case, and all other cases, are the scene, and the scene.
So Barkman has a look at all of the evidence to make a determination of what actually happened.
The speed of the vehicle went directly to the issue of intent. Early on, the term ram was used.
All right, let me get clarification. Were you actually hit, were you shot at, or you were rammed with a vehicle and hurt in that manner?
Hey, rammed in the vehicle, hurt in that manner.
When you use the term ram, there is a clear implication that it was an intentional act. It was clear from the physical evidence that this Border Patrol vehicle was exposed, and that if Sean Miguel had decided to ram it, he could have rammed it at a much greater angle. The speed in this case was probably 15 miles an hour, give or take. This looked like a parking lot collision.
Barkman ultimately forms the opinion and testifies in court for the defense that if anyone should be charged with the crime, it is the Border Patrol agent, Joseph Spann.
In every officer involved shooting that I've looked at, the first thing I do is take away the badge. If someone runs into my car, I might be afraid. That does not justify me opening fire.
Tamra Malimbo is a federal public defender and represents Sean when his case goes to trial. She says there is an air of deja vu and notices a trend with some of the accused who come before her after an altercation with the Border Patrol.
The pattern that we see is there will be situations where maybe a Border Patrol agent acts out of frustration, anger, rage, and our clients are the ones that get charged.
9 days into the trial, the jury finds Sean not guilty. Malimbo says she is relieved by the verdict, but there is something that still troubles her.
Agent Spann is still working for Border Patrol. He is secretary of the local Border Patrol union.
Both Eamon and Sean are working to regain their lives, happy to be free, but still reminded of the past.
It was a mistake. An accident like that was really bad, and it changed a lot of things. I'll always be reminded of what happened because of the scar on my face.
Coming up, what is being done to balance the responsibilities of law enforcement and the needs of residents on both sides of the border?
The more you invest in the training and the tactics and the less lethal technology, the better our agents feel about it.
The U.S. Customs and Border Protection Advanced Training Center in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, is a 224-acre campus demonstrating the latest technology in law enforcement training. It includes a tactical training building with a fitness center, mat rooms, classrooms, and a state-of-the-art firing range. This is where the elite go within the Customs and Border Protection to sharpen their skills.
Taser, taser, taser.
After a 7-month investigation into the Border Patrol, we traveled here to meet the man in charge and experience exactly how agents are prepared for the real world. Commissioner Gil Kurlikowski leads the agency and has ultimate control over its 60,000 employees. He took us on an extensive tour of the latest in less lethal weaponry, like collapsible batons, pepper spray, and compressed air launchers. The goal, fewer fatalities, a move Kurlikowski has pushed for.
So Jose, this is one of the most effective weapons. It's a pepper ball launcher. It can put out a cloud of pepper powder that will really fend someone off.
So if we wanted to get it at an individual, Commissioner, you would always go towards...
Exactly.
And then if I wanted to pepper spray the area...
Right. You can see that cloud of dust would drive a lot of people away.
As part of our tour, Kurlikowski grants us exclusive access to their most high-tech training tool. They call it the simulator, and that's because it gives the agent 5 screens of 300-degree simulation of an actual situation they could encounter in the field.
Hey, 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 deténganse todos! Deténganse! ¿Dónde van a sus amigos?
Kurlikowski lets me try the new technology. I'm offered one of their newly created scenarios, a movie theater shooting. It may look like a video game.
Well, that was pretty intense.
How do you feel? But after a debriefing from an instructor, it becomes a real-time use of force educational tool.
Would you be willing to bet that you'd be able to shoot him before he shot you?
Probably.
You think so?
Maybe not. I don't know. A little later, we sit down with the commissioner. Based on our investigation, there are a couple of areas we really want to hone in on. You've been known as someone who really feels it's important that less lethal measures are used, if possible, across the board. Why is that so important to you?
Well, we need the trust and frankly, the credibility of a law enforcement agency if we're going to get people to cooperate and help us. We deal with people that traffic in human beings. That means we have victims, and we need those people to trust law enforcement.
You acknowledge that some of the problems that the agency has had in the past is because of this massive hiring surge that essentially occurred after 9/11. Some agents maybe shouldn't have been hired, and yet they were. How has that been handled since you've been here?
Well, during the time, particularly around 2007 and 8, the Border Patrol almost doubled in size, and some of the processes used to screen them were moved, in my opinion, too hurriedly. We brought on some people that perhaps should not have been hired. We do a much better job of screening than we did in the past.
I have been, quite frankly, extremely impressed by what you have here. How the different weapons are to be used that are not lethal, all kinds of high-tech training. How do you get that on a national level to get to all of the people?
The more you invest in the training and the tactics, and as you said, the less lethal technology, the better our agents feel about it, because we know we're not only protecting them, but we're also giving them additional options to use. And they didn't have many options in the past.
So how do you weed out the bad ones?
The process to remove somebody can be unfortunately painfully slow, but we need to be absolutely firm in making sure we uphold those ideals.
How do you turn a boat around that is as large as this, with so many thousands of people working?
So we know it's not a speedboat, and we're not going to make a quick turn. We know it's much more like a freighter. I think I brought in a team and a group of people with the same ideals and leadership capabilities that are necessary to make that turn. And frankly, I think we're making the turn. I know it isn't as fast as a lot of people would like. Frankly, it's not as fast as I would like. But it's also, once it's done, it's the kind of thing that lasts.
Commissioner Kurlikowski says he is committed to progress and transparency. However, he admits there is more work to be done. I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. Thanks for watching.